In a valley forgotten by time, where the mountains embraced the clouds and the rivers sang ancient songs, there lived a farmer named Tomás. Tomás was a humble man with hardened hands and a deep gaze. Every day, he went out to the fields, hoping to see his crops grow. But that year, the sun had been cruel. For months, the sky refused to rain, and the cracked earth devoured the seeds that Tomás sowed with great effort. The wheat, corn, and vegetables barely sprouted, only to die before they could grow. Tomás worked tirelessly from sunrise to sunset, but his labor bore no fruit. His neighbors, also suffering from the drought, began to abandon the village. Tomás, however, refused to leave the land that had belonged to his father and grandfather. "As long as my arms have strength, I will not let my field die," he repeated to himself each day, even as fear grew inside him like a shadow. One night, exhausted and hungry, Tomás went out for a walk. The dry, dark field seemed to whisper its misfortunes to him. The moon barely illuminated the ground, and a strange cold began to fill the air. Suddenly, he heard a noise in the shadows, as if someone was following him. "Who's there?" Tomás called out firmly, though his chest pounded hard. Then, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a tall and elegant man, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit and wearing a wide-brimmed hat that hid much of his face. His voice was soft and deep, but something about it felt sharp, like thorns. "Don't be afraid, my friend," said the stranger, slightly tipping his hat. "I'm just a traveler here to offer you what you need most." Tomás frowned, distrustful. "And what do you think I need?" he asked. The man smiled, revealing sharp, gleaming white teeth that shone in the dim light. "Rain for your field, crops to feed your family, wealth so you'll never suffer again. What I offer you, dear Tomás, is prosperity and an abundant life." Tomás felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories about beings who appeared in moments of despair, offering impossible deals. "I don't want any trouble with you," said Tomás, clenching his fists. "You'd better leave now." The stranger took a step forward, as if the ground didn't touch him. "I'm not here to cause trouble. All I ask in return is one thing. You'll have 7 years to enjoy your good fortune, and then you'll come with me, and if I refuse?" Tomás asked firmly. The stranger, who no longer needed to hide his sinister expression, lifted his face, his eyes glowing like burning embers. "If you refuse, your land will remain dry, your family will go hungry, and soon you'll follow the others who have already left. But if you accept, you'll be the most prosperous man in the valley." Tomás felt the weight of his words. He thought of his wife, the few animals he still had, and the dry fields he loved so much. Temptation, like a poison, began to grow in his mind. "What guarantee do I have that you'll keep your word?" Tomás asked, feeling his lips speak words he didn't want to say. The stranger extended his hand, and out of nowhere appeared a golden seed, shining like the sun. "Plant this seed at dawn, and you'll see it grow before your eyes. That will be my guarantee." Tomás swallowed hard. He knew this was wrong, but hunger and desperation were stronger than his fear. "Fine," he finally said, his voice barely audible. "I accept your deal." The stranger, satisfied, disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind the smell of sulfur and the golden seed in Tomás's hand. The next day, Tomás planted the seed in the middle of his dry field. As soon as he covered it with soil, a soft rain began to fall, soaking the parched ground. In a matter of hours, where cracks once lay, a green, strong sprout began to grow. "A miracle," exclaimed Tomás, tears streaming down his face. For the first time in months, he felt hope. In the days that followed, the rain didn't stop, and the seeds he had planted earlier began to sprout like never before. Soon, his field was full of life, golden wheat, tall corn, and wildflowers swaying in the wind. The animals grew fat, and his family smiled again. Neighbors returned to admire Tomás's field. "I've never seen a harvest like this," they said. "What luck you have, Tomás," commented others. But Tomás remained silent. Despite his success, every time he looked at his lush, abundant fields, a knot formed in his chest. Deep down, he knew all of this came at a price, and time was running out. 7 years seemed like a long time, but the stranger always kept his word. Tomás knew he had to find a way to save his soul before it was too late. The years passed in the blink of an eye. What initially seemed like an eternity soon turned into a shadow haunting Tomás's thoughts. For 7 years, the field flourished like never before. The wheat was golden, the corn grew so tall it seemed to touch the sky, and the fruits from the trees were abundant and sweet. The wheat was golden, the corn grew so tall it seemed to touch the sky, and the fruits from the trees were abundant and sweet. The people in the village said that Tomás's land was blessed. But he knew the truth. At night, when the wind whispered through the leaves, Tomás heard a distant voice that seemed to laugh at him, reminding him of his pact. His wife and children slept peacefully, but Tomás would sit in the old wooden chair by the fireplace, staring at the flames with a vacant look in his eyes. He knew the stranger would come for him. The 7th year arrived with an unsettling beauty. The days were brighter, the colors more vivid, and the animals stronger, but for Tomás, it all felt false. It was like a curtain about to fall, revealing the darkness behind it. "I can't let this happen," he repeated, his face buried in his hands. Then he remembered the words he had heard as a child in one of the many stories told by his grandfather. He can never take a soul that knows how to confront him. The mind is his greatest enemy. One day, without telling his wife, Tomás took his staff, his straw hat, and a small bundle of bread and water. He knew where he needed to go. The Whispering Mountains, where, according to legend, a wise old man lived who had answers to everything. The journey was long and difficult. He climbed steep hills, crossed freezing rivers, and walked through dark forests where the wind seemed to whisper his name. Each step grew heavier, as if the stranger were placing invisible stones in his backpack. But Tomás didn't stop. On the 3rd day, exhausted and with trembling legs, he reached the mountaintop. There, he found an old cabin, almost hidden among trees and mist. White, calm smoke rose from the chimney. Tomás approached and gently knocked on the door. "Come in," said a deep and serene voice from within. Tomás opened the door and entered. Inside, everything was warm and cozy. An old man with a beard as white as snow and eyes as bright as stars watched him from his chair. In front of him was a wooden table and a cup of tea that gave off a sweet aroma. "I've been expecting you, Tomás," said the old man, never breaking his gaze. Tomás felt a chill. "How do you know my name?" he asked, his voice trembling. "When a man faces him, his name echoes everywhere," the old man replied with a peaceful smile. "If you've come all this way, it's because you seek to save your soul." Tomás nodded and, unable to hold back any longer, fell to his knees before the old man. "Help me, please. I made a mistake. I made a deal with him, and soon he will come for me. My children, my wife. I can't leave them alone." The old man leaned forward, placing a hand on Tomás's shoulder. "Stand up, good man. Not all is lost. He is cunning, but he is also proud and vain. And therein lies his weakness." Tomás stood up, his eyes filled with hope. "What can I do?" he asked. The old man took a small cloth bag and handed it to him. When Tomás opened it, he found 3 items: a small golden seed, an old rosary, and a white candle. "These will be your weapons," said the old man. "He will test you, but you must be cleverer than he is. Listen carefully to what I will tell you. First, plant the seed in the dry soil. What grows will be your first shield. Second, when the night is darkest, light this candle. Light always drives away the shadow. And third, when the battle seems lost, hold the rosary with true faith. Do not use it as a mere charm. Use it with faith in your heart." Tomás took the bag carefully, as if carrying the destiny of his life in his hands. "And if I fail?" he asked in a trembling voice. The old man looked at him with tenderness, like a grandfather watching his grandson face his first storm. "You won't fail, Tomás, because he can tempt your body, but he can never break a soul that has faith and courage." Tomás pressed the bag against his chest, grateful. He bid the old man farewell and began the journey back home, his heart pounding stronger than ever. The final confrontation. Tomás arrived at the village just at sunset. The sky was a deep red, as if announcing what was to come. His wife greeted him with tears in her eyes. "Tomás, where were you? I thought something had happened to you," she said. Tomás embraced her tightly, feeling the warmth of his family as a protective shield. "Everything is fine, my dear. Soon, everything will be fine." That night, as the wind howled through the windows and the fire in the fireplace danced nervously, Tomás took out the small bag and placed it on the table. He knew the stranger would come soon. "I'll be ready for you," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the flames. The night was darker than usual. The stars, which usually illuminated the sky like distant lanterns, seemed to have hidden behind a thick mantle of clouds. A cold wind blew through the dry branches, as if the earth itself was holding its breath for what was to come. Tomás, sitting at the table, held the small cloth bag the old man had given him. His fingers gently touched the rosary, the golden seed, and the white candle. In his chest, his heart beat like a drum. Suddenly, the wind stopped. A sepulchral silence filled the house, and Tomás knew he had arrived. "Tomás," whispered a deep voice from the darkness. The farmer stood, his legs trembling but his gaze firm. The main door slowly opened, as if pushed by an invisible hand. There, in the doorway, stood the figure of the stranger, dressed in his impeccable black suit and wide-brimmed hat. The stranger hadn't changed at all in 7 years. His eyes burned like embers, and a cruel smile illuminated his face. "Tomás," he said softly, almost mockingly. "I've come for you, just as we agreed." Tomás swallowed hard and clutched the small bag in his hand. The moment had come.